And again, for those of you just joining us in the chat room, welcome and happy Black History Month. I am honored to have with us tonight my executive team of Jordan Stevenson and Dear Harvey. And of course, we have some special mentions, honorable guest, Deputy Mayor for the town of Shelburne, Deputy Mayor Steve Anderson. Welcome. Tonight, I am honored to have with us hosting, or I should say, or expert tonight, who is from Operation Black Vote. Her name is Velma Morgan. Velma has a very impressive resume. She has experience in creating and implementing policies and programs with the provincial government. Her work includes government work, such as leading the Pan American Games, the creation of a province's sports plan, and the creation of passing two legislations, the Ontario Immigration Act and Ontario Black History Month. These are significant achievements. She's also co-organized the first Black Political Leaders Summit in Nova Scotia. Her positions in the provincial government and work in education, she ensured that voices of marginalized communities were reflected in policies in government communications. She also helps to strengthen collaborative ties between racialized communities, youth, and government in new and innovative ways. She is chair of Operation Black Vote Canada, and she also co-architected the 1834 Fellowship program. And she is the architect of the first ever Black Community Provincial Leaders Debate, Black Women's Political Summit, and Next Generation Political Summit. Please help me welcome Velma Morgan to our Ask the Experts tonight on politics and voter engagement. So I know we're virtual, but we can still give a show of applause virtually. For those of you who are in the chat, you can send in your smiley emojis, or you can use the emoji feature to submit some clapping hands for us. So welcome, Velma. Before we get started, we are going to invite you to submit any questions that you may have. We have a list of questions have been pre-submitted already. And we will prioritize the questions that are coming from our live sessions, okay? So without further delay, I would like to invite Velma to ask our first question. Our first question is essentially to get a sense of the room, understand, where everyone is from, experience in politics. So Velma, over to you.
Thank you, Afia. Before I start, I would just like to, I know that we're all over the province tonight, but I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendats people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. I also acknowledge that Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the New Credits covers Toronto. I also acknowledge all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or generation past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly forcible displanted Africans brought here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery today. I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So before I start, I want to acknowledge Janoy and Nicole. They're both on our the board, and as a team, there's a couple other people. We try to make things happen. So thank you for joining us here. And you know what? Janoy is here. Janoy likes to talk, so we might have to pivot some questions over to Janoy. We all have a lot of political experience. Everybody on the board either worked for a cabinet minister or works for a cabinet minister or in the bureaucracy. So there's lots of political knowledge. As Althea said, I do want to read the room. I do want to know who is in the room just to tailor my comments. So I guess I just want to know where is everybody from? So are there anybody who is from Dufferin County, that lives in Dufferin County? I guess you could put your hand up or the emoji just so we know. Okay. I guess everybody else is from outside. Toronto? Toronto, okay. All right, I just want to know. GTA, Mississauga, Brampton. Okay, anybody like outside the GTA? So we're looking at like London or, oh, okay, good. Guelph, Windsor, outside. Okay. Now some personal.
Kitchener.
Kitchener, okay. Some personal questions now. Hands up if you voted in the last election. Okay, okay, so we're, okay. Hands up if you belong to a political party. Or when I say belong, you don't have to be a card carrying, but you identify with a political party. Okay. Oh, okay. Hands up if you belong to a riding association. Okay. Okay. Hands up if you ran in an election. Okay. Okay. Hands up if you plan on running in an election. I don't know if that drink is a yes. I saw the hand go up that way as a drink. Okay, hands up if you know, this seems like a very knowledgeable group. So hands up if you know who your elected official is, municipal, provincial, federal. Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, so this seems like a group of knowledgeable folks. So that's good to know. I can keep my comments a little bit higher level.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I will kick off the first question that was pre-submitted for us.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to jump right into your own political journey. Can you speak about your own journey of voting and why it's important for you?
Okay. So I actually got involved in elections when I was 15 years old. My grade 9 science teacher, Miss Pollock, asked for volunteers, and being the eager beaver that I am, of course I volunteered. And it was to work on an election campaign on E-Day. And my job was to be a scrutineer, an outside scrutineer. So my job was to go outside and make sure those people who are on the list get out and vote. So once in a while I would go into the polling stations and, you know, cross people off. And then at the end was a victory party. And that experience, along with the victory party, got me hooked. I was like, why have I never heard about this before? So since I was 15, I've been involved in election campaigns in Canada. However, I've been hearing about politics my whole life from my parents. My parents are from Jamaica. They both belong to, one's a PNP, one's a JLP. So there's that conversation that I would hear when I was younger about politics, but it was more Jamaican politics. At 15, I basically learned about Canadian politics by doing it. I didn't learn in school. I just learned by doing it. And I realized that, you know, having worked on campaigns, people wonder, like, how did those people get those jobs, right? Almost everybody who is a political staffer worked on a campaign. And I think those are some things that I think some communities don't realize, how jobs are how people get jobs, especially the political jobs. They're not really advertised. They're never in the newspaper. There's never an ad for it. Is you worked on my campaign, or you worked on so-and-so's campaign. So, you know, you could be the director of comms, or you could be, you know, the MPP liaison, or you could be a policy person. So it showed me and demonstrated to me the importance of being involved in politics, in the importance of having a voice at the table, whether it's, you know, just dealing with stakeholders, or whether it's, you know, putting out the government's message. I'll just leave it there, because I think there's going to be more questions about that.
Perfect. We have a question from the chat.
Oh, okay.
What is your, yes, already. What is your view on the state? Oh, just came off the screen. What's your view on the state of the political climate in Canada? Some argue that it is becoming more like the US, where it is more about personalities instead of ideas. Great question.
Good question. Good question. So I think when you compare it to the United States, I think we're in a good state. However, if we just rely on that we're in a good state and we're not as bad as the United States, it can get as bad as the United States. We already have organizations that are ultra-right. We have the Proud Boys, we have the Soldiers of Ordon. So, they're influencing our politics. We had Faith Golden, who ran in Toronto, and she got, 3% of the vote. She came in third. So we're not as bad as the United States, but it doesn't mean that we won't get there if we're not vigilant, if we're not paying attention to our democracy and making sure that people are upholding our values. Do I think personalities? Yes, I think, a lot of times people are voting for that personality. People are voting for that one-liner. I could name, but I won't. Two people who became mayor and premier on a one-liner, and no one else knew what their platform was. They had a one-liner, and people just gravitated to that, and gravitated to that kind of personality where I'm going to take no criminals, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that to make sure everything is the bad guys lose out and the good guys win type thing, without even knowing what their policy is. So yes, I do think that politics is becoming more about the personality and less about the issues.
We do have another question from the chat from Leanne. So you talked about participating on campaign to get non-advertised government jobs. Does the same hold true for deputy ministers and ADMs? And if so, what role in the campaign should they play?
So yes, the bureaucracy has they have a HR, and they do advertise. So there's a government side and there's a political side and the government side. The political side are those people who work directly for the minister or the MP or the parliamentary assistant, and those are political jobs. So in everything that we do, we have to keep the party's mandate that was promised in the election in mind. And then there's the government side, and the government is there regardless of which government is in power. And those are jobs that are advertised, and there's a process of going through them. Janoy is a government employee; he's a bureaucrat. Whereas Nicole's on the other side. Nicole is a political person. Nicole's they both worked on campaigns, but one's on one side. Is a totally different process. The government's bureaucracy is actually advertised. Now, deputy ministers and ADMs. Those are unique positions, because even though those positions are advertised, there are times when the government will go and tap on somebody's shoulder and say, we like your expertise in for instance, in education or post-secondary. Could you come and be the deputy minister for that? So sometimes those senior level jobs are not jobs where people are promoted to. Sometimes they seek outside people to do those jobs, depending on their skill sets.
That's a great question and answer. Thank you. You touched on earlier about the riding association. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what that is?
Yes. So riding associations only apply to provincial and federal politics. So each riding will have, so each party in the riding will have an association, and that association is the local organizing hub for that particular party and candidates. So for instance, let's say I live in Spadina, Fort York, and let's say I was a Green. The Green Party would have a riding association. And so if I wanted to run or somebody wanted to run, they would contact the riding association. The riding association would also do fundraising for that candidate. The riding association brings in volunteers to help with that candidate. And the riding association has a structure. There's a president, a treasurer, a vice president, and they just basically take care of the candidates. If there's a candidate, if there's no candidates, then they still function as the eyes and the ears in that riding for that particular party. So I think I always tell people, if you want to get involved in a very basic level and you belong to a political party, then join the riding association, because you can help determine policy from the riding association. They have provincial council where the riding associations will go to provincial council and talk about policy or debate about policy. If you wanted to run, join the riding association. You get your feet wet, get to know the community, get to know who other players are, and you can run. For some political parties, in order for you to be a candidate, you have to actually contact the president of the riding association first, or have them involved in your process in order to be a candidate. depending on the party.
Wow. Okay, that's great information. Thank you. See if there's any other questions in the chat. Not yet. I'm going to switch gears slightly and talk a little bit about voter engagement. How would you describe voter engagement, especially amongst our youth?
So we know that from the last election, voter engagement was low. It went up slightly for adults, but it actually dipped for young people. So we need to do a lot, so much better on voter engagement. Now, what's interesting is there was a concerted effort in the last election. In fact, Elections Canada had voting stations on university campuses to make it easier for students, and still that didn't transpire into more voter turnout. I think youth are disillusioned by the process or by the people who are running. Also, for a lot of youth, especially racialized youth, they didn't grow up in a system where their parents are bringing them to vote. I have friends where they've been going to the voting polls since they were 2 years old with their parents. So when it was time for them to vote, it was second nature to them. They know the process. They know they go in. They present their credentials and they vote and they put it in the box. It's second nature to them. For a lot of other people, it isn't second nature to them, especially new Canadians, where either in their country the voting system is totally different or it's non-existent. So they don't participate in that. So, in fact, in the last election, we were a part of a group at Ryerson where they did mock, what do you call them? Mock polling stations, where they showed people what to do when they got into the station and polling station. Your credentials, your name get crossed off. You go and get your ballot. You go into that little box, check it off, and put it in, and you leave. Because a lot of people will walk into the station like, what do I do? Where do I go? So we did a mock one so people could actually know what it is to vote or know how to vote before they actually did it.
That's a great idea. Do you have a sense of how successful that event was in terms of how they translate into actual numbers at the polls?
So they didn't track it. So we did a couple in Toronto, and they actually did it all over Canada. And they received money from Elections Canada to do this particular project. I'm going to say it probably didn't do as well as we thought, only because voter turnout didn't skyrocket, right? But I don't know what the exit polling on those are for them.
Okay, fair enough. Keeping on the same theme, what can political leaders and community leaders to get our youth more involved? So you taught your activities at Ryerson. What else can our leaders do to get our youth more involved?
Our youth. I think we need to start civic engagement courses in elementary school. Right now, I believe it's a half course in high school, and it's an elective, right? So this is something I think everybody should do. Everybody should vote. And I think, we have young people, as soon as they're able to get their driver's license, run out to get their driver's license, right? We need young people, as soon as they're able to vote, to go out and vote. And that's because sometimes, as I said before, they don't live in a family where voting is something that's done as a habit, right? Maybe issues are talked about, but voting isn't done. So I think we need to start civic engagement courses in elementary school. I do know that they do have, on every election, they do a mock voting for all the students, actually grade 4 and up, for all the students to vote for their particular candidate. But with that needs to be information about being civically engaged, the importance of civic engagement, and what it means to be civic engaged, and why you need to vote, and why it's important for you to lend your voice, and why is it important for you to participate.
Okay, excellent. We have another chat question. For those who are considering running in the next elections, what is your advice for them? For example, basic first steps.
My advice is to start now. So it also depends on which level of government you're working for, you want to run for. So if you're going to run municipally, it's a totally different strategy if you're going to be running for provincial or federal. If you're running federally, or provincially, first of all, you need to decide which political party you want to run for. And then you need to figure out which riding you want to run in. And then you need to join the riding association. And you need to also put your name forward as a candidate. And that is a whole process in itself. So, let's say I wanted to run in my riding and I've decided I'm going to run in my riding, then I have to go and get the application forms, talk to the riding association, fill that all in, and then start recruiting. Because for nominations, you win by how many people vote for you in your riding. So, for instance, Nicole lives in Brampton. She couldn't vote for me because for the nominee, right? For the nomination, because it has to be people in your riding. And if somebody isn't part of the party, you have to be a member of the party to be able to vote. Some parties have free memberships. Some parties, it's a $10 membership that you have to purchase. So I would have to go out and recruit people to join the party so they can vote for me, and then convince the existing people who are part of the party to also vote for me. At some point, the party will call a nomination for my riding. If nobody runs against me, then I'm acclaimed. If somebody runs against me, then we go through the nomination process and there's voting. If I win, I become the candidate. And then I wait to get my marching orders from the central office. If it's a federal, probably start campaigning right away because there's probably going to be an election this year. If it's provincial, I can start doing some kind of canvassing. I would start going out and doing events in the riding, connecting with folks in the riding so they know me, know my name, type of thing. One thing I forgot about the nomination process. Just because you put in an application doesn't mean that you automatically become a candidate. You have to be greenlit by the party. So the party will do a background check on you. So I always tell younger people, check your social media. Make sure there's nothing on there that's going to embarrass you or disqualify you from being a candidate. Anything that you said that's online, they will find it. And if it doesn't jive with what they stand for, then you probably won't be greenlit. So you have to be greenlit by the party before you can actually stand for nomination. That's provincial and federal in a nutshell. Municipal election, you just have to go in and sign up. I think there's a fee, $100 if you're running for, I won't tell you the price because I think it's different per municipality. So there is a fee and you have to get signatures. And then you just go in and you register and you become the candidate.
Okay. Wow. Great first steps.
One more thing. I also think there's some kind of resident requirement. So you have to live in the riding for a certain number of years or time before you can actually run in that.
Okay. Now, does your organization provide a summary of these first steps that someone can reference?
So
they can hire you. Okay.
Yeah. We don't, but we're actually redoing our website, so it will be on our website. It's interesting. We just finished a round of nomination meetings from all the provincial parties in Ontario, and from that information, we thought was valuable information that we're actually going to put that on our website and link that information to the different individual parties, because each party's nomination process is slightly different, because the leader has different powers. Some parties, the leader can nominate and acclaim 5 people, others is 10 people. Other parties, no, there's no acclamation. You have to run for a nomination. Some parties, the riding association has to prove that they've gone out and sought out women or racialized people before a nomination can happen. So we have the basics, but for the nitty gritty, you would have to go to the specific parties.
Okay, perfect. We have another question. Actually, if Nicole or someone on your team can drop in the chat your website, that would be fantastic for those who want to search in the future.
And I want to also welcome Brianna Lee. Brianna is one of our young people who is part of Operation Black Vote as well.
Excellent. Welcome, Brianna. One more question from Melanie. Thank you for your question, Melanie. The residency requirement, what is the average requirement?
So I think it ranges from 6 months to 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, municipalities have different requirements.
Okay, perfect. Question that is of particular interest to me is how can we get more women engaged in politics?
Yes, that's interesting. So studies have shown that you have to ask a woman 7 times, 7, before she says yes. For most women, there's a list of things that we have to do before we decide that we're even qualified to run. Where I know there are men in the room here, but a lot of times we're more qualified than the men who are actually elected already, right? But in our minds, we think we have to do all these different things before we can run. It's harder for women to run. It's harder for us to run because the environment is not the best environment. We're criticized a lot for the way we dress, the way we look, the way our hair is. If you just ask, former or even current female politicians, they'll tell you the scrutiny that they received to their male counterparts was a lot more. A lot of times women have a problem with asking for money. And a big part of running for a campaign is fundraising and being able to ask for money and having the networks. A lot of times men have more networks where they could pull in resources. That's changing little by little as we immerse ourselves in the workforce. But a lot of time, females or women just they want to climb their career and be at the height of their career before they think they should run. And I always say, you don't have to be, 4 times better than the guy that you're going to run against. Just be yourself and you could probably beat the guy. Studies have shown that women are more electable anyway than men. So chances are if a woman runs, they'll probably win because they're actually more electable.
Wow, thank you. From Leanne, OBVC being nonpartisan, what is its stance on changing our electoral system to get Black people, especially Black women, to win, not just run?
So I guess my question to Leanne would be, what system would we change it to get more Black people and women to run?
Well, I guess there's a lot of options out there. Should I take off my camera? I don't want to. Let's see, did I do my hair today?
No worries.
Hi. I don't know. The first past the post system, doesn't seem to be working to get more women elected. I'm just wondering about, what are the other systems that we should be looking at in order to get more representation from underrepresented folks, especially Black people and Black women.
So I know people talking about proportional representation, and that won't necessarily get more Black women or to win. We need to get more Black women running first, right? So in order to have a good chance of winning, we need more Black women to step up and say, you know what, we're going to run, and not step up 3 months before the election. Step up like a year before the election. So, do the work. And I think for me, in the last round of provincial election, we had some really good Black women running for the Liberal Party. 2 things happened. One, the Liberals lost badly. But secondly, they came on about 3 months before the election. Having worked on campaigns, you need to really be able to do the entire riding at least twice. You need to be able to canvass it at least twice. And you can't do that in 3 months. You could barely do the entire riding in 3 months. So I think we need to be organized. Selena has a saying, and she always says it, and I always laugh. She goes, you need to run in packs. But you need to run in packs early enough, right? So you're not lonely when you're running. So if you're thinking of running in the election in 2022, right now you should be getting ready to run. You should be getting ready to run, putting your name forward, trying to get your nomination in place. So at least you can start working the riding, getting out and meeting people, getting to know the issues in the riding, being part of the policy that your party is being created, and coming in 3 months before an election. isn't going to do it, whether it's this system or it's proportional representation.
Okay, great advice. Another question that was earlier submitted: does race, cultural background, education, and one's socioeconomic status play a role in voter turnout? Interesting question.
Yes.
Does race, cultural background, yes?
No, I said yes. It isn't.
Okay.
My initial response to that is no. I think it depends on the engagement of those people. There are people who are racialized, who are socioeconomically don't have a lot, but voting for them or having a say in our democracy is important to them, so they go out and do it. A lot of very middle class people don't vote. They just don't vote. There's this, I had this saying, bad politicians are elected by good people who don't vote. And there's a lot of good people who just don't vote. It's raining outside. A football game's on. I'm not going to go and vote. They're going to win anyway, right? They don't need my vote. They're going to win anyway. So I think it's complicated. And I don't think we can just say because you're racialized or because you're a certain socioeconomic that you don't vote. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. I remember early on when I used to campaign, we would be in certain areas and they would say, we're not going to drop in that building. And I'm like, we're not going to drop in that building. Why not? And they'll say, well, they don't vote. That building don't vote. I'm like, how do you know? We can tell by the polling results, right? The addresses of people who vote, who people don't vote. And the building was racialized and they didn't want to waste a brochure dropping in a certain building because they didn't vote. So that also contributes, right? Is the chicken and the egg. Are they not voting because they don't want to vote, or they're not voting because they don't have the information to vote, right? So I always, now when I'm on a campaign, because I'm older and wiser, I'm like, I really don't care. We're going to drop there. Everybody deserves to have the information they need to vote. If they choose not to vote, it's on them, but at least we've done our part to provide them with information about us, about our candidacy, so they can make a wise decision. And sometimes, you know what, maybe we're the only ones that drop, so they come out and just vote for us. So let's not just say, an entire community or entire section didn't come out and vote because we can tell by their polling that we're not going to drop there. And I see Steve has a question, a comment.
Since you have your hand raised, Steve, you have to come on camera.
I'm not dressed appropriately.
Okay, fair enough. Put you on the spot, no worries.
Being said, I do have a question for Velma, and thank you, Velma, for doing this. Running in the municipal elections and deciding to do that was a very nerve-wracking decision. And I didn't have a lot of people, at least in my circle, that had the knowledge and the experience to say, hey, Steve, this is what you should do. Here are these initial basic steps. Again, for those, and some people raised their hands that they were considering running in the next elections. Is there an opportunity for people who are looking to make this move? Because it's a very important and very massive move. Is there opportunities for them to find mentors that they could speak to that could help them navigate sort of that decision and how to go about being the best candidate they could be?
Right. So yes, I think so we do a municipal boot camp every 4 years. We want to do it a little bit more often, but there's so many other things to do. But we do a municipal boot camp where we actually talk about the different elements of running a successful campaign. In terms of mentorship, I would contact people who are existing counselors, or as long as you're not running against them, and regardless of who they are, whether they're black or white, male or female, I would contact them and say, I'm thinking of running. If you're not comfortable with contacting somebody within your city, there's tons of people that's outside, and everybody people like to mentor, people like to provide information. I would go and ask them, have a coffee with them, or now a Zoom with them, and just say, tell me, 3 things that you would have wanted to know before running that they now know that can help me, and just pick their brain.
Great question. Thank you, Steve. Earlier, you touched on the fact that you talk to students and you mentor them to make sure that they have a clean profile.
Yeah.
How can someone who's considering running, make sure that they, have a clean profile? I know organizations out there that can scrub and do all these fancy things.
Yeah.
But how can an individual ensure that they do the cleanup and homework necessary to make sure that they're squeaky clean?
Right. So if you're running for a particular provincial party, I would make sure that I haven't made any disparaging remarks about those parties. I would go through my Twitter feed. I would go through my well, not really, well, Instagram, usually no, but Facebook, and I would delete those, even though, they're still out there somewhere, but I would delete those. I actually have all my social media private. So people just can't go in and look at what I'm saying or doing or post on my thing. So you might want to make it private as well. But I would just be careful in what you post. I think, there are times, there's so many times something happens or somebody says something and I want to post something. And there are times when I will write it and then I just delete it. Because really, do I need to say it out loud? Do I need other people, strangers' reactions that I don't know? Because you never know where your life will lead you, where you would be, and you don't want, because you want to get the most amount of likes or retweets to ruin a potential opportunity down the line. So I'm always very careful, and I tell young people that be careful of the pictures that you post. And not only for politics, for any job that you want to do. Nowadays, they will ask you for your social media handle so they can go in and look at it, because their reputation is tied to your reputation online as well. So yeah, get it scrubbed. There are agencies out there that do that, but you could also go in and do it yourself. I randomly will go and delete tweets that I've tweeted. Not necessarily that they're bad tweets, it's just I'm thinking no one needs to know that I like mangoes, right? So I just delete those. And also what I do, I Google myself. So every once in a while, I will put my name in Google and see what comes up. And there's been one time where I was, an organization posted something about me. I think I was posted I was speaking at their event or was at their event, and there was a picture in my bio there. And I actually had to ask them to take it down because I didn't attend their event. I was invited and I turned down the speaking engagement, but they still had it up that I attended. And I didn't want that to be on there because I turned it down for a reason, because of the organization that didn't jive with my values, but they still kept it up. So I would, if you're out there in the public, I would put your name in Google and see what comes up and make sure everything that's on there is true and honest and meets your standards. If not, call up the organization.
That's great advice. It actually ties into last month's session when we talked about personal branding and making sure that you're putting your best image out there. So I'm happy to hear that theme is continuing. So great advice. Thank you.
And also, I also get invited to speak at a lot of places or do interviews. And I think people always say, it's an opportunity, you have to take it. I don't take every single interview or invitation that I receive, because either I don't like the organization or I'm thinking the topic isn't something that I want to talk on. News media will call me up to talk about the criminal justice system, and I'll say, well, that's not. It's either education or political engagement. The criminal justice system is not something that I have a lot of knowledge on, and I'm not going to go research it for your interview. So talk to somebody else in the community that has that kind of knowledge.
Great tips. Question from Imam Yahya Solomon. What other ways are there to vote if someone can't get to the polls on election day? Is online voting possible? If yes, how will they be validated? Okay.
So what's interesting is, and I found this out later on in life, I didn't even realize this. Okay, so online voting, I think they're testing that out in some jurisdiction. But Elections Canada has several ways that you can vote. So there's the advanced polls that's usually open about 10 days before the election. There's on election day. There's mailing ballots. You can actually request a mailing ballot and mail it in. And depending on your situation, an Elections Canada or Ontario representative could come to your house with a ballot and pick up your ballot. So there are several different ways of being able to cast your vote. There's a whole list of them on the Elections Canada website. And the last one was one that threw me away. I'm thinking, really? Like if you're a shut-in, they would actually come and certify your vote and take your vote in person if they need to.
Wow, okay, did not know that. I will go to my pre-submitted questions again. Considering we have recently seen, or what we have recently seen in the US with the attack on democracy, why do you believe that voter engagement in Canada is important?
Right. Because I personally think everybody needs to participate in our democracy. And one way of participating in our democracy is by voting. As I said, you get the government that you don't vote for. And it's important that, like the last question, we don't vote for personalities, but we actually vote for issues that's going to affect you personally. I say yourself, your family, your community. And you need to vote for the right person. A lot of times we especially provincial and federal, we just vote for a particular party because that's what we've always voted for, and not really look at their platform. And I think we need to look at their platform. Parties know who their base is. They know who is engaged and who's not engaged. So a lot of times you'll see, a particular party will talk about, farmers and, the dairy industry. And you're thinking, what are they talking about? Why are they talking about the dairy industry and farmers? Well, guess what? Where the farms are and where the dairy farms are, that's their base, right? Those are the people that's going to vote for them. So it may not affect me in Toronto, but guess what? They're not talking to me. They're talking to their base. And you want to be part of somebody's base that they're talking to you, right? Unfortunately, and this is my opinion, I don't think the Black community is anyone's base. And so they don't really talk to us per se. And I think we need to just step it up a bit and vote more and demonstrate that we're voting. And it's harder for our community than other communities to demonstrate that we vote. We live all over the place, right? We don't live in one set community. So for instance, there's some ethnic groups that live in a certain area of the city. So you can tell that they've come out and vote by their polling, right? I live on a street that has, or a poll, let's say if there are 100 people in my poll, there's way more, but let's say there's 100 people, there's probably only about 20 Black people. So how can you say that, and we all vote, how could you say that, the Black people come out and vote, or I didn't vote, because you don't do exit polling, right? So it's one of those things where we have to figure out a way to demonstrate to political parties that we are engaged. And I think Operation Black Vote is one of those organizations that, we keep politicians on their toes, but we also demonstrate to them that our community does vote. Our community are interested in issues like everybody else is interested in issues, and that they also need to engage us. And one event that solidified that for me was that when we did our provincial leaders debates in the last provincial election, instead of telling our community, you have to go out to the debates that they're having, we said, no, we're going to have our own debate. And we had our own debate in a center that's run by members of the Black community. And we had over 600 people come out in storming rain to listen to the leaders about the province. And all the issues that we discuss are issues that they would have discussed at any other debate. However, because of systemic and institutional racism, those issues affect us a little bit differently. So we wanted to know concretely how, if elected, how are you going to deal with those issues as it pertains to our community?
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, did you want to come on, put yourself on mute? Or unmute yourself and ask your question? Go ahead.
Hi, Alethea. How are you? Hi, Steve. Hi, Velma. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's an amazing. But just I have like two questions in one. The first question is, there is a countries by law the people have to vote. There is a law for voting that it's mandatory upon everyone that he have to go vote. Like why we don't have something like this in Canada for for voting? And also the other one, it's a little bit silly questions. Forgive me. Why people under 18 they're not allowed to vote? Thank you.
Okay, so the first one, I think the reason why we don't mandate people to vote is because we live in a democracy, right? And mandating people to vote, I think a lot of people would say that's against their right to force me to do something, to force me to vote. And I would anticipate, just like, for example, we're asking, or the government's asking, and other people are asking people to wear masks for everyone to be safe, for yourself to be safe, for your family to be safe. And there's lots of people who are like, no, 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 you can't force me to wear a mask, even though it's for their own safety. There's no, you can't force me. There's the anti-maskers out there, right? I think the same thing would happen if we said it's mandatory for you to vote. I would suspect there'd be lots of spoiled votes. People either not voting or going is just spoiling their votes just to say, you can't force me to do this. So that's the why not make voting mandatory. And under 18, there's been this debate for such a long time. Why don't we lower the voting to, I think they want it to be 16. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel but having people who don't have enough information about policies or their mandate to actually vote, only because where are they getting the information from? They're not getting it from school. So you're asking a 16-year-old to vote on the next MP or the next city councillor without having adequate information to vote. I won't rule it out, but I think we need to be able to figure out how do we ensure that they're not being persuaded by an adult to vote a certain way. How we're going to make sure that they get the adequate information, so they're able to make an informed decision to cast their vote.
Wow, great questions. Thank you so much. I like the idea of having them to vote at an earlier age.
Sorry, Alethea, to cut you off, but
no worries.
What Velma said at the end for about 18, that this applied to everybody. Like this applied to everyone. And I know lots of youth, 15, 14, 16, and they lead lots of places, and they're very knowledgeable because the kids now more educated and more open for everything, and very, very smart too. For voting. Yeah.
I don't doubt it. I'm actually a teacher. So I do know that there are some very, very smart 12, 13, 14-year-olds who could probably do a better job at selecting leaders than some adults. I guess for me, I just want to make sure that they're not under duress in terms of casting their votes. 18, you're an adult. When you're younger, like, are your parents, for not all young people, but are your parents ensuring that you're voting the way that they want you to vote? And I think, I don't rule it out, but I think a lot more research and a lot more work needs to be done into lowering the age for voters. Because people say if they can drive at 16, why can't they vote, right? So.
Perfect. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Thank you. Bella, I believe you have a question. Did you want to unmute?
Thank you, Alethea, and thank you, Velma, for this wonderful panel. I'm actually enjoying it. I actually just came onto this because Alethea was doing it, and it was just for her. But I'm also enjoying it because you're speaking so well.
Thank you.
A constant struggle I face as a citizen who cares about our community, and to be honest, the only time I really care about elections is when they're happening. Otherwise, I'm not really involved. But the problem I face in almost every election is that the leader of the party may be charismatic, intelligent, or smart. And I was just joking with Bruce Walkinshaw earlier today is that, sure, Justin Trudeau may be a very charismatic leader, and which girl doesn't have a crush on him? I was talking like that. But the person representing him may actually be not as intelligent, not as charismatic, and not as dependable. And so the problem I face is what happens when someone representing your riding is not as high up on, caliber-wise as the prime minister or whoever's representing the party, or the other way around, like the person representing your riding is intelligent, remarkable, but the leader of the party is a doofus. What do we do then? And then voter engagement for me, I don't feel like voting.
Yeah. Ditto. I mean, there are times when I had to hold my nose just to cast my vote because I wanted a particular leader, but the person who was running my riding was just like, really? You should have just run a paper bag. That would have been better. It's the system we have. We have the constitutional monarchy where, we don't elect a prime minister or premier directly. We elect from our local, and depending on how many representatives per party gets elected, forms a government. So there's we're not, that system's not going to change. But let's say we have a local leader who is a dud, and the leader of the party isn't. I think what we need to do then, join the riding association, right? Join the riding association or run. That's a good way to solve the problem. You run or get somebody to run. I've been part of riding associations where we said, okay, people will come in because they want to run. And we're like, this is the quality of people that we're looking for. We want our riding to be well represented. We want the person in our riding to actually do work for us and go to Ottawa and speak on our behalf. And so we really we made sure that the candidate that was selected to run on the slate was somebody that we could throw our hat behind. But I say you need to get involved. Also, as a part of the riding, when they come for the nomination, make sure you have your membership so you could actually vote, right? That you could vote for the candidate. And as someone who's a member of the riding association, there was a time when somebody was running and I thought, I don't like this person. I like this person. So I did everything that I could in my community by going out and signing up folks to make sure the person that I wanted to win won. Because I just went to the community. I said, you know what? I need you to become, or are you a liberal, or become a liberal, and you need to come to the nomination meeting and you need to vote for this person because this person is going to do X, Y, Z. Look at their credentials. So I think it's to get more involved. I said all that just to say, just get more involved so you have a say in who represents you. I hope that was okay.
Perfect.
I say you run.
Yeah, and let me just jump in on that. That's a gregreat point that you mentioned, Velma, about taking the bull by its horn, right? In the sense of if you're not happy in the way that somebody else is doing it. And that was part of my motivation in running myself. For years, like you, Bella, I would sit there and gripe about, oh my God, this person, and they're doing this, and I can't believe it. And there were times, to be quite honest, where I didn't do what I should have done, which is my civic duty, and hold my nose, as Velma said, and go ahead and vote anyways, because I was just so turned off, right? And so there were periods of time, to be honest, where I just didn't cast a ballot because I was sort of disillusioned with what was going on. Later on, I started to realize that's not an effective way to get change. I do have to cast my ballot regardless. But what I convinced myself to do is stop complaining. This is for me. Stop complaining, Steve, about how other people are doing it. If you want to do it, get out of your comfort zone and you go and do it. And you put yourself in that position if you believe you could do it better. Now, that's not the case for everybody, and I understand that. But I think, as Velma said, If it's not you, there may be somebody else that you can encourage. And lastly, I'll just say this. I know we have Bruce here, part of a writing association. He knows sometimes you have to choose, as we talk about duds, it's those who are there, right? It's those who come to your doors. And so maybe the writing association knows that the candidate they're running is probably not the best, but it's the best of what they have. And so sometimes those are the problems as well. So sorry, I didn't mean to carry on with that, but that's my thoughts.
No, you're right, and there's sometimes, nobody runs against that person, so that person's acclaimed. So you need to run somebody. So you just run that person. But yes, I would say get involved in some way, shape or form, and have your voice and heard in the local writing association. Go to meetings, hold whoever is elected or running accountable. Make sure they know that you're going to be scrutinizing what they do. That might put some fire under them.
Perfect. That brings us to a close, everyone. And what perfect way to end our session tonight on politics and voter engagement. Bella, I see that you have one other question in the chat. The essence of time will officially close, but Velma will send you a quick note in the comment section, sir. Okay. So we're going to close officially at 8:01 p.m. Thank you everyone so much for coming out and participating in tonight's event. For those of you who are not yet familiar with Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, I encourage you to visit the website, www.dufferincountycba.org. And of course, if you want to find out more information on Velma and the great work that she is doing, you can visit Operation Black Vote at obvc.ca. And before I officially close, Velma, I'll give you the last few words. How people get a hold of you and any final comments that you may have.
So get a hold of me is operationblackvote.ca. That's our website. Our social media is at Black Vote Canada for all our social media. If you want to email me directly, I'm at chair@operationblackvote.ca. And what I would say to this group, I would say that, apathy is boring. So let's get involved in some way, shape, or form, whether it's joining a writing association, whether it is going to debates or going to provincial council, going to meetings when your member has a meeting and speaking out, going to City Hall and doing dissertations or listening to folks. I think, and Steve can tell me if this is true or not, but I think it is, elected officials kind of get nervous when they see a whole bunch of people from the riding show up and not know why they're showing up, right? So show up and make your voice being heard. We have 37.7 million people in Canada. We have 338 people representing us, right? So we have to show up. We have to show them that our voices need to be heard. And when they get to Ottawa, they need to make sure that, whatever they do in terms of their voting or what they say carries our voice as well. In Ontario, we have 14.7 million people with only 124 people representing us, making rules and laws for us. We need to add our voices to that by showing up to their town halls, by writing them, by doing anything that we can to make sure they know that we're not being silent, that they represent us, and they need to make sure our best interests are being represented.
Perfect. What a way to close out the session. Thank you so much, Velma, for your time. Thank you, everyone from Operation Black Vote team. I see Brianna and Nicole and Janoy. Thank you so much for coming out and showing your support.
Here too.
Who else is here?
Zoya's.
Zoya, okay, perfect. Thank you, Zoya, for coming out. Bruce, I see that you're on the line. Thank you so much for your support. My executive team, Gear and Jordan, thank you for coming out. Minerva, thank you. And of course, Bella. Deputy Mendelson, again, thank you so much for your support. All of the participants who showed up tonight for this informative session, again, I appreciate every single one of you. So thanks, everyone. Have a good and happy Black History Month.